This is TWiT.
Apple, obviously after last week and the furor over Apple's child porn tracking system, Apple's done some backtracking. They've done some explanations. Rene, can you summarize the response? I know that it's been all hands on deck kind of over the last week. Did they approach you? I wonder.
Yeah. No, but I think like I was doing the sort of like because it was so confusing. I was doing explainers before explainers were cool.
Right.
So I was getting a lot of that done.
It needed a lot of explanation, frankly. It was very
so there was two things. Yeah, there's two big. One, they went on. I think we talked about this already. They went to Matthew Panzarino. They had Eric, who's the head of privacy engineering.
The usual suspects.
Yeah, and then they went to Joanna Stern with Craig Federighi, who's the big gun, the second most recognizable person after Tim Cook. And they're doing what they said is like people are misunderstanding the technology. The only part that still concerns me is that I think Apple still misunderstands the pushback. They think we don't understand the technology. That's why we're upset. And they don't understand that regardless of the technology, we're upset.
Yeah. We don't understand. No, you don't understand.
So what they've said is, he said there's like 30 is the amount of like for the
they've actually clarified a little bit. So now the threshold they say is 30 because they want to bend over backwards not to have false positives. This is
around 30. Yeah. And
how many fingerprints have to be triggered in order for you to be then reviewed by Apple before you go to be reported?
And the other big thing
NCMEC
is the auditing. They say like, and this is all nebulous because who's doing the auditing and what's doing the auditing is, but they're saying that because there's a single disk image for iOS across the entire world, it can be audited. And if there's any, that the database isn't just from NCMEC, but it's assembled from the convergence of several databases to avoid any spurious results.
That's another thing they added. Multiple national databases will be used. Yeah. Which doesn't frankly reassure me at all. That's not. How does that make me feel?
If you don't want
better?
it on your device, you don't want it on your device. That's the whole part, right?
Yeah. But I thought that I did listen to the Joanna Stern interview. As typical for a Joanna Stern interview, was excellent. She's awesome. the antithesis of a bozo. I did think that a couple of Craig's arguments were kind of facetious because he was making the point that, hey, there's the reason why our way is better than everyone else's is that like Google scans every photo that comes every photo on their server. We only scan the ones that like you upload to the device. And I'm like, excuse me, but what's the difference? You're still coming into the result where if Google scans the photo after you upload it to Google Photos versus Apple scanning every photo but before you send it up to, that's a specious argument. Like it's the exact same result. It's not as though
I don't think anybody really. I don't know. I won't speak for all of you or anybody else, but I feel like, look, everybody else is scanning cloud storage for child sexual abuse material. That's not an unreasonable thing. Dropbox does it. Google does it. Facebook does it. I don't think it's unreasonable for Apple to say, if you're going to store it on our systems, our servers, we're going to scan it first. Fine. Yeah. I think the bigger one, frankly, is looking for nudity in messages coming in.
Or just doing anything on the phone.
Anything
like
on
this
the
has
phone.
been because this is the line.
They felt. I gathered from Craig that they felt like, oh, but don't worry, we're scanning on the phone before we upload to iCloud.
I think that's the case of. Exactly. I think Rene hit it on the head last week when he suggested that I might be extrapolating a bit from what Rene said last week, but I really think that part of Apple dogma is that if you're doing it on device, that makes it intrinsically safer, more secure, more private. And I think this is an occasion where the dogma is having a meltdown when it's faced with reality. The fact that they're doing this thing that no one else is doing, and everybody else, the entire world seems to be okay with the idea of stuff being scanned on a server, on a service, once I've let it psychologically out of my control by making the willful decision to take it off of my private device, this thing that I control, that I can drive a nail through it if I want to do that thing, and saying I'm relinquishing enough control that's saying that I want these services that Google Photos is going to be giving me. I accept that by taking this out of my control, Google can do lots of things with it, including scan it for things, evidence that I might have been conducting a crime, or allowing law enforcement to have access to it if they get the right court papers. It's when the third rail is you're really skeeving me out once you say that there's a form of traffic on your phone that we're going to start scanning on this device, this thing that I'm supposed to be able to control, and you're not going to have it. It basically tears down that sort of brick barrier in our heads between our private device and a cloud service. So I think that it's. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. I just think that they don't understand exactly why this cheeses us off and gets us really, really concerned. And they shouldn't talk down to people about it.
You cannot run the privacy ads that they run. Right. And then get into the phone. Like it's not. We don't have the expectation on a lot of other hardware or a lot of as Apple users. You know, it just undermines the entire marketing that they're doing around privacy to do this. And I feel like there must be some pressure that we're not seeing that required them to make this to do this.
Federici addressed that specifically, saying no, it wasn't pressure. It just took us a while to figure out.
Yeah, he didn't. They should have taken a little while longer and figured it out better.
Yeah. I don't care if a politician goes to a strip club. I care if they've been lobbying against strip clubs and saying, "Ooh, these people who are hooligans and terrible people who go to strip clubs." Just be consistent. Once you try to play the card that I am more righteous than anybody else, okay, great. Now we're going to be checking your credentials a lot more closely than we would be checking someone who claims to be an ordinary human being. And on privacy, Apple claims to be something other than Google, other than every other entity that transacts business over the internet. I think they're better, but they are still a multi-trillion-dollar company. And so I don't think they can play that card.
And you can be technically right and like morally wrong. Like there's a bunch of people who've looked at this now and said, if you have to implement this solution, this is probably the most privacy-centric way of doing it. But the argument isn't about privacy. Like we get lost in that argument. The argument is about sanctity. Like you're now violating my device. Even if you think you're doing it better, you think it's more private. I will even concede that maybe technologically this is a brilliant piece of engineering. I do not want it on my device. And I did a follow-up video now where I was looking at both those systems, Leo, the one that you were talking about before and this new one. And just like I think if Apple is willing to take a step back and say, okay, we're going to scan and we'll let parents block but not alert, or we don't want CSAM on our servers, but we recognize that we can't violate your phone. So what we're going to do is we're going to just move the photos to a private relay. We'll do the hash matching on a private relay, and then we'll do the envelope verification on the main Apple server, and that way we don't have full knowledge, you have nothing on your device, and this is like the bargain that we're going to strike. But right now it feels like they're unwilling to compromise what they think is better, like technological privacy, and they're forcing us to accept a way worse philosophical privacy and violation.
Is this in Apple's...
It'd be our job to do that.
The problem is this is in Apple's DNA, I'm asking. I'm not asserting, but it seems like this might be a problem in Apple's
being
DNA.
Our parent?
We know, being a little bit of a nanny. We know better than you.
You're welcome.
And you have to, you're welcome. You have to trust us that we have figured out a way to do this that's going to be private and secure. And just trust us. We know how to do this. And that makes it hard for them to listen to what people are saying. They just dismiss it.
The problem, and again, we're not concerned. The content that they're looking for is very it's defendable that you want to go after that content.
And they've historically done a terrible job of it.
But the problem is that we're afraid that list gets longer. Like that's the thing that I think everybody's afraid of, is that list at the behest of governments, that you've now opened up this little thing that I'm going to now get in there, and this has been the hard line that Apple has had with every government. Like, no, you can't get into the phone. You can't have the phone. You can't. And they said they're going to fight it, but it was just like, why did you go down that path? Because now that you've opened it up and people start thinking about it, you're just like, okay, well.
They say we'll refuse any requests.
Sure.
Unless please allow us to simply tie our hands by passing a law, because we don't like having to take a stance on anything.
Right.
But if you put in a law saying that we have to scan for pictures of like your president as Winnie the Pooh so that you can round these people up, please, we'd much rather not have to deal with that.
They say it's available only in the U.S., but I don't think that makes a difference. They're saying we have the technology, and we currently are only offering it in the U.S. Doesn't mean that China can't say, well, you're now offering it in China as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, their defense against that is that, again, it's a single disk image, and people like, Guy Rambo or will find this kind of stuff, and it'll be detrimental to their to their existence, or the existential threat to their existence. But for us, it just creates anxiety because it becomes Schrodinger's cat. We can never know. Like even if they don't do it today, we don't know what they're going to do tomorrow, and that feeling will persist forever. Like once it happens, we'll know, okay, yeah, our worst fear is realized. But if nothing happens, it's just a case of tomorrow and forever, and that's a terrible feeling to have to live with as just a user of the system.
And I think, Leo, you're right in that. I think that there's a conflict between the amount of credit that Apple thinks it has earned and maybe has justifiably earned in terms of how much trust it's earned from its users, and how much trust people are willing to simply give to, again, a $2 trillion company. Like I'll speak personally, where there are times where someone will say, "Oh, I can't believe it. Andy's just, how much money did Apple give Andy to say that, or how much money did he take from Google to switch from the iPhone?" And like, well, why would they think I would do that? Like, I think I try to live things above board. But then it's like, well, the thing is, you know that you're a good person. Your mom knew you were a good person. This person doesn't know you from Adam, so you kind of have to make sure that you consistently demonstrate that this is why my opinions are my own. I think Apple kind of falls into that same trap where they don't. It's hard for them to think that the general public is going to think of them as, again, I'm a $2 trillion company that is operating in international markets in a time where it is really, really difficult to operate in Russia, in Turkey, in Iran, in China, in all these other countries. It is impossible for us to simply trust that this technology will never be used in a way that hurts people. But this is the sort of suspicion that we have to have. It's nothing personal, Apple, but this is something you have to really make the case to us with your hat in hand and with a humble attitude. You can't just simply say, imagine the time that someone really, really insulted you and they said, "Oh, you didn't understand what I said. I'll dumb it down for you, and I agree that I was at fault in not messaging it correctly for people who are not going to understand what I say." It's like, oh, that's not the way to respond to a crisis, Apple.
Erica Portnoy at the EFF said it, I think, very succinctly. Once you've built in surveillance, you can't call that privacy preserving.
Yeah.
So what should so to date, Apple has not backed down in any way. They've just given us more information and attempted to allay our feels. So. But they haven't said, "Oh, well, okay, we won't do that."
We're not doing it yet. Yeah.
I mean, I think that the only thing they could say is, "Oh, we found." I mean, the face saving way out of this is we found some technical issues that we're gonna have. It's like the charger that never came out. This is the thing that we're still working on it. It'll be out, and then just slowly let it dribble out into the spring, and then just let it disappear.
To be clear,
none of their privacy stuff is shipped on time. Like every big privacy initiative over the last few years has been delayed at least until January, February, March of the next year.
Yeah. To be clear, there is nothing you can't turn off here.
Right.
Is that right? If you turn off iCloud photo sharing, no scanning of your photos. If you want it
to be a big mess.
Yeah, you can't stop them from downloading the fingerprint database. That's going to be built into iOS 15. So that database, it's just a bunch of hashes, but that database will be on your phone. But you can say, don't scan my photos because I'm not going to use iCloud Photos. You have to opt in if you want the parental iMessages scanning, right? So that's not going to happen unless you say yes to it. I guess you can't turn off Siri and search. Is that for everybody, the Siri and search warning, oh, you're about to see nudity? Or is that just for kids?
It's still in the U.S., but they do that already. Like they do that for like Planned Parenthood. They do that for a vast number of things already.
Yeah. And realize that Google search does that as well. If you have to turn it off, but it will do
safe search.
Safe search.
Yeah, but safe search is it's been so long since I've used it. I think it's off by default, or is it on by default? I don't.
They're always trying to protect you from yourself, and it makes me ducking and angry.
I agree. I hate ducking. That ducking stuff. Yeah. Apple really is a nanny. I'm gonna my pick later is gonna be a new photo app, which I love, and in the terms of service, they say
I'm gonna follow you right now.
We can't allow you to upload nudes because of Apple, and if we have to build some things into the app that allow you to say I don't want to see that before Apple would approve it. So we're just going to not allow nudes, and that to me is, I mean, it's a photo app, so there's porno, but there's also legitimate photographic nudity. Right. That to me is a nanny kind of ish point of view on Apple's part that really strikes me as out of date, at least in the U.S.
Sure, but it's a horrible
and
idea. Like it's I'm just saying, you get yourself into a lot of trouble.
To what?
Yeah, I mean,
allow nudes, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no. I'm saying it's they can allow it or not allow it. I'm just saying that functionally as a person, it's a dangerous thing to do. That's all.
Oh, nodes of yourself, you're saying?
Of anybody. Like yourself, your friends, whatever.
We're all
it is.
born naked. I don't think nudity
is
anything to be embarrassed
famously,
about.
Facebook has these huge rot conversations. Facebook has these huge rot conversations about death camps and things like that. But if you show a nipple, they will kill your account. Like it is so weird. Feel like the puritanical overtones of these companies.
Yes, it's puritanical. It's old. It's pretty old. I mean, for Christ's sake, in France, there's a topless woman on their money. It just doesn't seem like nudity is such a big deal. I understand you don't want pornography, but violence. There's no stricture against that. I mean, Apple lets you to watch the Suicide Squad on their devices.
Yeah, and the iTunes Store is fine, but not the App Store. It's so sorry, Andy. It's so weird.
Yeah. No, I was just going to quickly say. I mean, this is something that's been on my mind for a while. That how. I understand the reasoning saying that, well, we want parents to be able to buy iPhones for their kids without worrying that they're going to be exposed to content that the parent does not think that it's time for that kid to be exposed to. On the other hand, I remember the first time that I walked through Times Square and they had women topless with body paint as part of that retinue of people who will take tips for getting pictures taken, and my first very Boston, my monocle popped up. Oh that's not proper. This is a family place. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, well, that's just your attitude. Why if kids were allowed to accept that, look, men can walk along the beach without a shirt on, women can walk along the beach without a shirt on, either because they're cooler and they're more comfortable and because they want to. What kind of a sense of shaming are we creating in female nudity that we're saying that no, it's okay for men, it's not okay for women because that's shameful? And how long would this attitude last in the United States if children could walk through Times Square and not have their eyes shielded from it because there's nothing shameful about it? It's just like there's a naked cowboy in his BVDs.
We were there with Michael when he was 16, and he definitely shaded his eyes from dust.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was much more offended by the Olafs that kept coming over to try to hug him. That really offended him.
We're so bad at this that we will have protests over a mask, but nobody protests having to wear like a pants or forcing women to wear shirts. That's not draconian, but this mask thing, that's terrible. Not like just how might we justify the puritanicalism in our heads?
No, and I have to say we don't allow swear words on our podcasts because we don't want an explicit tag. It's not because of Apple. It's because I early on was told by a number of parents, I listen to this show loud in the house. I don't want to have stray expletives. And B, I want my kid to be able to listen to it, and I want kids to be able to listen to it because I think on the shows, less so with the news shows, but the help and how-to shows, I think kids should be exposed to technology, and if they're interested, parents shouldn't say, I can't let you listen to that. And I don't feel like it adds anything to have expletives. On the other hand, I have no problem with expletives. Yeah. In fact, now that I know that Call Her Daddy is worth $20 million a year, $500,000 an episode.
You're rewriting the code of conduct right now.
It's expletive. It is. She swears every third word, and it's like, I get it. Okay, it's allowed.